Introducing Gear Websites, your all-in-one solution designed to make life easier. Whether you're a busy professional, a student juggling multiple tasks, or just someone seeking simplicity in daily life, Gear Websites has you covered. With its user-friendly interface, you can effortlessly create and manage your online presence without any technical expertise. Need to improve your gear, start a blog, or even learn a new skill? Gear Websites does it all. Enjoy seamless integration with various tools, ensuring that you can connect with your audience and manage your content efficiently. Plus, our responsive design means your website will look stunning on any device. Don't let complexity slow you down. Experience the ease of Gear Websites today. Visit us at gearwebsites.com and take the first step towards simplifying your online journey. Gear Websites, making life easier, one click at a time.
All right. So I seen that Clover was live earlier and talking about the drones or whatever. So I'll just go ahead and answer all those questions. So you can fly a drone recreationally, or you can fly a drone commercially, and makes sense. The FAA regulates the airspace. So if you think about the airspace where the airplanes are in space, the satellites and all that stuff. So they make sure it all doesn't hit each other, basically. And same idea as traffic laws or something, so that everyone who's in that airspace is understanding some basic understandings, right? We know that in our country, at least, we drive on the one side of the street. We know how to pass and how to use directional signals. And if our signals aren't working, what to do as a backup, just that kind of stuff. So it's the same kind of thing for the air. And when you think about a little drone can get up in the way of things, and it can't get out of the way as fast as other things can move. And then some basic understanding of like weather, and like what happens around airports, and I think looking into the future, they're also trying to think about how, when we think about drone deliveries and other things that are coming in the future, like the Jetsons and those tubes and stuff, they're just trying to think about how to create a organization for all that, I guess, or a structure for all that maybe in the future. So anyway, so that being said, nothing we can do about that. The FAA exists. They regulate the airspace. We have the FCC, I think, that regulates the radio waves. And we have, laws that regulate how we can drive. We have laws that regulate the way that we carry. So we have these laws. I think they're similar that way. That being said, the confusion and the frustration comes from, when do you need to be commercially flying, or when do you have to fly commercially? So as a YouTube, well, the law is that if you're using the drone for anything other than recreational, just having fun, then it needs to be a commercial license. So literally, yes, on paper, if you took your own drone up into the air, just a little bit above your house, well within all the, adjustments or zones or anything, so you're not causing disturbance or anything, but you're just looking at the roof of your house to determine whether or not you need new shingles or, new chimney or something, technically using it for other than recreational use. If your friend says, hey, can you take my drone, or take your drone and get a picture of my house for my home listing or something, for my real estate listing, obviously that's a little easier to figure out. But yeah, that's, even though you're just giving them the picture, technically it's a commercial use. So, technically, whatever you want to say, like, yes, there's a rule, there's a line in the sand, and that's where the line in the sand is. I'm not making the line in the sand, I'm just describing it. That being said, do you need a Uber license or a cab license to drive around people commercially? Yes. Can you agree to take your friends to church every Sunday? And do you need a cab license for that? If you're planning on doing that for the next 6 months, like, probably not, but maybe some town would technically require it. I don't know. So it's kind of that kind of thing. for what Clover was describing and what he's using it for, it would be a situation where I tried to describe in the comments, something happens inadvertently or unexpectedly that he didn't anticipate, right? So like I've had a drone leave. They call it a runaway or something like, but they just decide to leave. And in my case, I think what happened is the drones, when they take off, they learn where they are on the planet Earth so that if something happens, they can go back to that spot. Like if they're running out of batteries, for example, or if something damages it and it can still maneuver, it's going to attempt to get back to where it came from. So each time it launches, it records where it came from. And I was using an old drone, and I was using an old phone with it. And I went over to my friend's house and we used his new phone with my old drone. And I suspect that new phone gave the drone some sort of insight, like his front yard is where home base is now. So 2 days or 3 days later, I'm miles away, and I took the thing up in the air and it said, I don't have enough battery to get home. I better try getting home. And it went towards his house, which was on the other side of a giant sign. So it hit a sign. So that kind of thing. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't anticipate it. I took it up into the air. 5 seconds later, it was on a journey of its own design. So that's the kind of thing. When you can't anticipate it, you want to understand everything that's going on so that, one, you don't cause that kind of thing problem, or two, if it does happen, you understand what you're supposed to do about it and what the procedures are, maybe. So that being said, I'm just using an example, but so it could go haywire, it could go crazy and do something weird on you. And not that having a license is going to prevent that or give you some extra ability if that happens. But if you've gone through all this prep work to get a license, you've probably encountered studying all the different permutations of, again, procedures and things you might be able to do to prevent that in the first place, probably, or, well, definitely prevent it in the first place, probably, or at least understand what to do, again, if it happens. So, so there's the unexpected crazy thing, right? And being kind of prepared for that, or educated for those possibilities, I guess. But then the other side of it is, since there is this line in the sand, and there are a-holes, and there are people who hate each other, and there's people that have figured out that the only way that they're going to build something tall is if they knock everything else tall down, so that their first one-story building looks tall. If they knock down all the two-story buildings, then it looks like they got the biggest building in town. So some people, that's their strategy. Some people will do that intentionally, inadvertently, whatever. And that's, I think, the biggest concern of a YouTube channel, because I really don't think, I can't know, obviously, but I really don't think that the FAA, who's worried about planes and everything else, and airports and everything else, is really worried about every YouTuber and where their cameras are located. But their viewers are, who knows what. And that's where I think you'd have some concern. And for me, that's one of the reasons I decided to go ahead and get the license. And I also wanted to use my drone for real estate stuff and things like that. So that's the bit, it's the nuts and bolts of it. But I think he was mostly concerned about that, like as a content creator, if it's required. So the black and white answer would be, technically, yes. You're doing something with it that's other than recreational. So yeah, you need to be a pilot. If there's any questions, feel free to ask them. I don't know how many people are going to show up in the middle of the night. I could go do work, I suppose. I was trying to get away from doing work. Went to go live and figured out that YouTube shut down my other channel, so that's lame. And no information why, no email or anything. So what's up with that, YouTube? I guess they just, I don't know. So I'll sit here for a minute and see if there's any questions. But anyway, I think that's pretty much what he was thinking about, or what was concerning, he was questioning. As far as how do you take the test is called the 107, and it's because you're taking an FAA test with the FAA. You're taking a pilot's license, I guess I should say, or you are, you're getting a license from the FAA. I'm looking at my emails, trying to see which email address would have told me your YouTube channel is screwed. Yeah, nothing. Yeah, no email or nothing. I'm looking at all my different emails now to see if one of them is going to tell me, like, hey, here's why we shut down your channel. But I basically went to go live and it said, oh, you can't. YouTube won't let you. Then I went over to YouTube and tried to go live straight from there. And it's like, oh, no, you can't go live. We shut you down. So lame. Hopefully it's not forever. But if it is, I guess I'm going to Rumble. So F-107, or F-107, I keep saying F-107. The 107 pilot's license is the only one there is. There's going to be another one, it sounds like, and the other one won't apply to us. It'll exist, but it's for like Walmart when they're going to be sending out those robot drones to deliver stuff. So there will be another one, but again, it won't apply to us. There's some conversation there, but only for drone people. It's really not that big a deal. It kind of, when they created that new license for Walmart's, it made it kind of took off the table the ability for regular people like us, regular drone pilots, to fly beyond the line of sight. So like, stand somewhere and fly further than we can see, which, I don't know if I have a big opinion on that. It sounds like a great idea. I'd love to be able to do it, but I'd also be scared shitless because you can't see your drone. And I don't really have an opinion on that. But anyway, so you have to get this license. And the worst part about it, I would say, other than having to study for it and pay for it, it's $175. All the other things that Clover was reading were different. Like, it's $175 because that's the fee to the government. So that part is always the same. I've got this thing on my gear channel. That's why. So it's always $175. Now you pay $175 for the test, and you have to schedule the test and show up at a testing center. And because it's an FAA pilot's test, you have to go to a pilot testing center. So I went to a place that wasn't on an airport, but it was a testing center where like a bunch of police and prison people and healthcare people and all kinds of people were getting tests on different things, but like official testing where we had to put all our stuff in bags and they metal detected people. Like, it was legit, like making sure you're testing without cheating, basically. So, but an official testing center. And most of the testing centers in my area are at airports, because I'm pretty sure it's the same testing centers that pilots go to, because the 107 is just the number of the pilot's license. There's a whole bunch of other pilot's license, and I guess this is the 107th one or something. So it's always at the end of the list because we're just we're just drone pilots, at probably the lowest of all pilots or whatever. But it's the same place or the same procedure as if you were going to get a license for a 747 or a balloon or a glider or a Cessna. Just those are all different kind of pilot's licenses, and we're getting this one. So it's kind of like an FFL. So thing is, you can't just pay the fee, fill out a form and be done with it like you can with an FFL. You have to go to a pilot's testing center. So anyway, that is the worst part of it, in my opinion. For me, it's better up deal than Clover because I'm in Tucson and there's airports and buildings here, big town. So there was another option for me than going to an airport. I don't know. He looked at, I think, a testing center list, so he knows how far he has to drive, and that does suck. And that's just because it's a pilot's license. So that being said, it's $175, and because it's an official thing and you're wasting everybody's time, if you don't pass, they just keep your $175. No, goodbye. Pay for it again if you want to take it again. And then there might have been, was there a fee? I really don't even remember. There might have been like a $40 fee for the testing center. I really don't remember. But so anyway, $175 is basically what you're going to pay for. Everything else he was talking about was like extras, like if you wanted to take a course or if you wanted to use somebody's guides and that kind of thing. I'll talk about that in a second. The other thing he was talking about was the $5 fees. And the $5 fees are for, like, let's call it a license plate for your drone. You have to put a sticker on your drone when you're flying it commercially. And you have to put a sticker on your drone if it weighs more than 250 grams, if you're flying it recreationally. So, in other words, if it's heavy, you're putting a sticker on it no matter what. If it's lightweight, you don't need to put the sticker on it if you're just flying it in your backyard or whatever. But if you're flying it commercially, you're going to need a sticker no matter what the weight is. So, and the sticker just has like your information and the drone's license plate, like identification number thing, which is just a big long serial number. Now, that costs $5 for the serial number, and you get that in the same place with the FAA when you're doing your pilot's license and stuff. So you're going to get your pilot's license from the FAA. You're going to also log into the FAA to their drone section and let them know you're a pilot, and then let them know that what your drones are and register them. Now, if you're not a pilot and you're going to fly recreationally, you're still going to need to log into the FAA and let them know that you own drones and that you're flying them recreationally. So you don't just get to fly drones in the FAA's airspace without telling them. You don't have to have a license. You can fly it recreationally, but they do want you to kind of log in. You have to actually take a test called Trust. I forget what that stands for, but like the recreational drone test or something. And it's something like a 15 question test. And it's sort of like the gun safety rules. Like, don't fly your drone in front of the airplanes. Don't fly your drone in an airport. Understand that the air is not yours, that there's rules for the air, and you aren't allowed to go anywhere near the big air. You can only go in the little air, and that kind of thing. So, as a recreational flyer, you still do want to take the, what's the word, like step to go to get the trust certificate and then register your drones if necessary. Now, I think you can register your drones if you don't need to, if you feel like it, because it's only $5 and it might be peace of mind or something. You might feel more official. I don't know. But so that's the $5 thing he was talking about. All right. And I don't think it costs anything to take the trust test. You just take that online, and you like once you've finished it, you've got it on your, like, you can say you've passed it. Okay, so now we've talked about the 107 license and applying for taking the test or whatever, taking the test at a testing center, paying for it. If you fail, good luck. You have to just pay it again and go back. You have to wait 2 weeks. So if you fail, you have to wait 2 weeks. You can't just go right back in the door. You have to wait 2 weeks before you can take it again. And again, you have to pay the $175. Now, sometimes the study guides and things, if you fail, can buffer that. So G23 was in Clover's chat, and let me know if I'm missing anything. I only listened to about half of his, and I decided I'd rather just go live. I should probably tell him I'm live. Did he say he was going to bed? It's pretty late for him. He's an old man. Well, let me go see. He's usually not on Discord anymore. Yeah, he's not on here. So, well, I can probably still message him on here, though. Yeah, I was just farting around. I wasn't even doing anything. I just didn't even know anybody was live. I think I must have looked to see who was live, and then he went live after that or something. I must have looked to see who was live, and then he went live after. All right, I'm trying to grab him the thing. I don't know if he'll get the message if he's not on the Discord. I don't know how Discord works. What the hell? Are you going to paste? Stupid thing. Copy. Why's my copy paste not working? So yeah, I don't know if I'm missing any of his questions or what, but go into your question about the study guides. So my deal was I had done some of this before when I was in Civil Air Patrol, I used to hang out with kids that were going to get their pilot's licenses. So everything free going to your pilot's license, I did with them. And then when it would get to stuff that cost money or would take me too much time to study or whatever, that's when I ditched them and did other stuff. But I had a couple of friends that were really hardcore into getting their pilot's licenses, and they had their pilot's licenses before when they were like 16. Before we could drive, they were flying. So I know I did most of the shit towards glider and air and hot air balloon because that's the stuff we could do before we could drive. And like I said, I did everything for free up until getting those licenses. I didn't really care about pursuing the licenses, but I would have if they were free. But anyway, so I remember learning some of the stuff that was on this test. So they're going to test you on things like, I think there's like 7 sections. Some of them are so dumb and basic that obviously you never need study, right? Like in an emergency, should you wait or should you, obey every rule, or, can you bend the rules if you have to get out of the way of an airplane? There's some of them are just so stupid and easy. You never have to study for them. Then there's, let's say procedure around an airport or something like that, or like pilot procedure. That one, good luck. Unless you've been a pilot, how are you going to know pilot procedure and airport procedure, right? Even if you watch TV and stuff, you probably don't learn that. So that you probably have to study. Everybody has to study that. There's weather. That sucked. Like I never knew that one good, and I still probably sucked on that the most. Because you have to know weather. I don't know why. Because of stupid clouds affect how you're going to fly, I guess. And there's like rules about where you can fly. It's not so much you have to know about like the nature of weather or something, but you have to know what you can go up to and how close you can get to clouds and when you can't be around them. And you have to know if you can't be around them and planes can't be around them, then you definitely don't want to get if the clouds are going to push the planes down, then you don't need to be getting in the way of that, is essentially what you have to learn. Then there's a little bit of, procedures like, oh, your drone fell out of the sky. What do? You have to know emergency procedures, like your drone hit somebody and cost money. Like now, what do you have to do? Just like in a lot of things, like how do you deal with the unexpected eventualities type of thing. So in other words, there's like 7 of these areas of the test. And let's say 3 of them are so basic you never have to study for them. The other ones, depending on your like experience level in these areas, you may or may not have to study for them. Here's the thing. You could know everything about weather because it's your thing. Like maybe you watch the Weather Channel every day and you know everything about clouds. That don't mean you're going to know what pilots need to know about clouds. So you're probably still going to want to study these things. Like being familiar with the topics doesn't mean you're familiar with what they want you to know. Like I know tons of stuff about maps, but what this symbol means on an aeronautical map, that's where you're going to probably want to brush up. So that being said, this is 2025. There are so many options. You do have to take this test, and I think there's like 90 questions, and they're going to give you 70 of them. And it's just like the ham radio test in the respects that they pretty much give you the 90 questions and say, we're going to ask you 70 of these 90 questions. So if you got a big enough brain to do it, you can just memorize those 90 questions and be done. Like you're going to understand every question because you've seen them before. So they may not they don't really give you the 90 questions, but they give you 90 questions that are very, very similar to the 90 questions in their pool. So if you study those 90 questions and get to where you're passing, you're probably going to do okay in the real test. But it's not like the ham license, where with the ham license, they literally give us the questions they're going to ask us on the real test. So we can literally memorize the questions if we need to. And that's what I do for my ham license. I'm no ham expert. I know some of the stuff because it's easy. Can you use a ham radio in an emergency? That kind of shit. Or, but when it gets into like, what wattage do you need your antenna to be at 30 feet, 40 feet from the radio? Like, I don't know any of that. So with that, I would just either remember like, oh, that one is the red one, the one with the red line where it wins or something. Like I would just remember some piece of the answer. And that's how I get through my ham licenses. This one is a little different because no matter what you memorize in the practice tests, it's going to be different questions in the real tests. Similar, but because they're different, it's asking you about weather. if it asks you how far away you have to be from a cloud, big deal. That's easy to memorize because all clouds are the same. But if it asks you what's the difference between stratonimbus and a blah, 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 something other kind of cloud, maybe you need to know more about clouds than you thought. So I don't want to freak anybody out, but it's there's these 7 sections, and you get a pretty good idea of what the questions are going to be. So at least you get an idea of like what kind of depth of knowledge you have or don't have on these different areas. All right, so it's also 2025, and that means there's YouTube videos, there's apps for your phone, and then there's websites. And what I did is the reason I explained that, I kind of had experienced some of this stuff before. This wasn't my first time like testing with aeronautical stuff, or with the FAA, I guess. So what I did is I took a bunch of practice tests, and I always would get like 80s or 70s or something in the practice test, like right around the line. Like I wouldn't fail, I would pass, I would fail, I would pass. And that's why I never took the test. So I own so many of these drones. I want to do something else with them. I decided, all right, I'm going to take the test already. So I took a bunch of the practice tests. The same thing. I was getting like 70s, maybe 80s if I was lucky. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to start testing. I'm going to start studying. So then I just scheduled the test for like a Saturday. It was like a Tuesday or something. I just scheduled the test for a Saturday, gave myself that 4 days, and just said, I'm going to learn it, right? That being said, so I went and used the online free website. There's probably about 5 or 6 ones that you'll find real easy if you look around. Basically, there's like a lawyer, there's a couple of schools, and then some other people that have provided really good practice tests online, like on their websites for free. And some of them are clunkier than others, but some of them are super nice. They'll tell you the answer, and like as you answer, it'll tell you if you're right or not. So those were really helpful. Then watching a bunch of videos to supplement, like when I would figure out what my weak points are after a few days, like I couldn't figure out clouds or whatever, and I was not I couldn't figure out what to study. I would go watch a few videos, and watching 7 or 8 videos about people talking about a test, you kind of get a pretty good idea of what's going to be on the test. At least it seemed like. So then that was it. I didn't pay for anything because by the time I was getting to like Thursday and Friday, I was getting like 90s on the tests all the time. And by the time Friday night and Saturday morning, when I went to take the test, I was hitting the test with like 100, all the practice tests. I knew all the answers. Literally, I just remember, I memorized all the answers. So I was pretty confident going into it. And then when I got to the test, the actual test, I can't talk about it because you have to sign all kinds of disclaimers or whatever. You're not going to talk about it. But essentially, they weren't the exact questions. Like they're similar. They're very similar, but they're different, and they're different enough that they make you question. If you're not 100% aware of the topics, and like going back and forth, real comfortable with them. Some of them were head scratchers. I'm trying to think of something specific. Okay, so one is airport approaches. So you may not know this, but airports, when you look at an airport from the map, you get a lot of information about the airport just immediately, about how big it is and its orientation, sort of say. So in other words, the airport has an runway, and the runway has to exist. So it's in some direction, right? It's either east or south or west or whatever. So whatever that direction of that airport is going to determine the direction that the airplanes approach it. So there's a thing called an approach, so that airplanes don't crash into each other trying to get into an airport. They all come into the airport the same way. And think of like when you're picking your kids up at the school or something. Like they're going to want you to all approach the school the same way so that it's just not chaos, right? So all these airplanes are going to be in a holding pattern. You hear about that all the time. They're just in this approach. They're just in this like pattern above the airport. Now, this is all way above where drones are or anything like that. But for whatever reason, they're going to make us know this stuff. Again, this is nothing. We're never allowed to fly there. Like we wouldn't have any reason to be there. Like, but for whatever reason, we have to know about this. And it'll say something on the test like, you are northwest of the airport and you hear the plane say on a radio, which why would you hear this on a radio? Like there's no requirement that we got to listen to the radio, but whatever. We hear this on the radio that the pilot is in the downward, what do they say, downwind approach of, 316 or something. And now you're supposed to know, oh, then the question is, which direction should you look to see if the airplane? And it's like north, south, east, or west. And you have to know from that word question, like where you are on the airport, where the airplane is on the airport, so that you can answer which direction your head would be looking to see the airplane, right? So you memorize that question, and that one, depending on if you follow what I'm trying to say here, like that one is in my mind, a pretty complicated question to answer. So when that's the kind of thing you just memorize. Okay, you memorize in the practice test, you have to say east, because whatever that question was, the answer is east. And you just remember it was east. Well, when they ask you a slightly different question, you can't just remember east anymore. So now you're screwed. If you don't know how that works, then you're not going to be able to apply it to that actual word problem. So that's where they can get you, I guess. And you only get, I think you can, out of 70 questions, you have to answer like 70% or something. So it's like 40. Like it's not that much. It's not a difficult test, as far as like you don't have to be so precise that like you have a 90 out of 100 in order to pass. Like it's a 70 out of 100 or something to pass, but they're only going to ask you the 70 questions. So anyway, so the questions that they ask you are pretty darn close to the questions in the practice tests or the sample tests or the online free resources. And for me, at least, I was able to just use those free resources over and over and over. And until, like I say, I was getting hundreds, because I just literally memorized everything at that point after like 4 days of doing it. And it's almost all I did for 4 days. I would do a little bit of work here and there and then go back to studying, because I was going to pay I paid $175 for that test. And I didn't want to, like I say, you just lose it. So, yeah, that's what I did. Now, what's it saying? Multiple choice or short answer? Everything that you answer on the actual test is circles, whatever that's called. Like in school, you just fill out circles. But they might be word questions, and there might be like a long, complicated answer, but it's going to be A, B, or C, or D, or whatever kind of thing. And they're not, I'm not going to say they're like trick questions, but they are questions that are precise enough that if you don't understand the topic, I mean, they're pilot's license questions. Like they're asking you real questions, and they're not making it, obvious, 3 obvious wrong answers and then the obvious right answer, just so that, you're going to win or you're going to pass. They're not trying to do that. They are trying to test you on your knowledge of this stuff. And there's no softballs. The softballs are like, should you, like a plane is about to hit your drone. Should you, hit the plane or fly out of the way, even though it's going to be, over 400 feet or something? Like there's some obvious ones that are like, well, obviously you're not going to hit the plane. Let's see. So multiple choice are inherently easier. Read all the answers. And there's plenty of time. I think they give you like 4 hours or something crazy to do 40 questions or 70 questions. And then here's another thing about the test. It's a official, whatever, FAA test at a testing center, but along with the test, and it's like on a computer, right? So that you have a booklet or whatever, but it's on the computer. That booklet has reference material, I guess you could say. And it has what would you call those? Like, when you have like a test and it has a like reference, the map on page 4. Well, it's on the screen, so you don't really have to look at page 4, but they still give you a book and you can open it up to page 4 and look at the map, right? And the thing on the screen might show you exactly what you need on the map. But now on page 4 of the book that they give you to, while you're taking the test, that has the whole map. And if maps have edges or whatever you call, like the indexes or whatever, the maps, the appendixes of the maps, and you get a lot of information there. So there's actually if you use the resource that they give you, this manual or this booklet that I don't even know, I don't think you can buy it. It's just they give it to you at the test and you're not allowed to talk about it or take pictures of it. I guess you can talk about it. But basically it's a reference, it's like a resource or a reference book. And a lot of the answers to questions are in that book. You just have to know where to look in the book. And in the book is nothing more than a bunch of maps printed out. So essentially, if you know where to look on a map, or you know that a map is going to have this answer for you, then you can kind of not be 100% on everything, because you kind of do have this cheat sheet. But you do have to, it's a complicated cheat sheet. You have to look at an airplane map and know how to read it. But again, for something like airspace, think about like airports. Some of them are super busy and some of them are just out in the middle of nowhere, don't even have a traffic control tower or nothing. So because airports are different, the airspace above them is different. The airplanes have to behave differently because, again, larger and different airplanes are going into these different airports. So that means that the airspace is different. So there's different airspace up there, and that kind of stuff. Most of us don't pay attention to that you might look up and think, hey, I'm looking up at the stars. Well, you might be looking through technically 4 or 5 types of airspace, because there's the stuff on the ground where no airplanes are going to fly, but helicopters might be. We're certainly down here with drones, but you never know when a helicopter has to land for like an emergency, right? So like that's the bottom airspace, and then there's the airspace above it where like airplanes fly. And then there's the space above that where airliners fly. And then there's the space above that where space is, right? So there's space above us. So there's airspace above us that we never think about. And that's where like the maps help you understand that, right? But trying to remember all that, good luck. Like, we're not pilots. So that's where the appendixes and that kind of stuff can really be a bonus. Virtually all professional testing is Pearson learning. Is that a type of some? Oh, do you know who made the test? I have no idea who made the test. I didn't even know to look for that. It probably says on there, right? Like, I just didn't know to look. So I didn't think or know to look. Clover did a show earlier, and he was trying to figure out about drone stuff using the robots. And the thing is, the robots are using the world, and there's a lot of weird conversations out there, people not knowing what they're talking about. So I only listened to about half of his show, but mostly I think he was concerned about, when you need a license, and then what's the procedure to get a license. The one other thing I was going to mention, even though it's a little bit sloppy, I might throw this into an AI and turn it into, get rid of all the ums and ands and stuff and turn it into a blog post or something to just add to the millions of blog posts that are out there about getting a drone license. But the one other thing I can think of that I would add is not everybody has had any kind of experience with this before. So if you're coming at it raw and you just want to pass the test, then you may want to go with one of the study guides or one of the courses, I guess, that are out there. Totally worth it. The one that I'm affiliate now of is in Prescott, Arizona, and they're a school up there. They do pilot license schools and they do other kind of schools, but they do a whole bunch of drone stuff. And their deal, I think their drone, pilots, like pass the drone pilot's license course. It's like most of their courses are either $69 or $150. So it's probably the $100-ish area. And let's say you pay $150 for a course. A lot of times those courses will say, if you pass or if you fail the test, we'll pay you back $175. So at least there's some of them out there that do that. So that's an option to kind of cover your butt. If you're not 100% sure, your course is going to cost $100-something, and your class is still going to cost $170, or your testing, I guess, is still going to cost $175. But some of them give you that, I'm going to call it insurance, I don't know what to call it, like guarantee, that if their instruction didn't help you pass the test, they're going to guarantee it with paying for your test. Basically, they pay you for your second test, right? They're going to give you $175 so you can take that second test gratis or whatever. And the other side of it is we have to renew our licenses every 2 years. So a lot of times when you're in one of those courses, they give you lifetime access, and I guess, something changes or whatever, it would be nice to have that resource, I guess, or that comfort of having people who are paying attention to go, learn from each time you had to go back and retest. But I don't know. Like I say, it's kind of I would say it's, for most people, it's probably, if you got the time and I guess, a little bit of gambling spirit or whatever, it's worth the gamble to study on your own, and then take the test when you feel you're ready. I don't know if there's some kind of numbers out there. Actually, I think there is. I think some of the courses will cite numbers that, like, 2 out of 3 people that don't use help will fail the test their first time through. And I could see that, because all the practice stuff is really close, but because it's not 100%, like I was trying to explain with that one question there, the differences are enough that if you don't understand the stuff, then you may not pass it. Like, it took me a bit, the first couple of days before I started studying it all, just trying to pass it by what I thought was the right answers. Kind of like what Woods was saying, is some multiple choice ones are, you don't have to know the subject matter, you just have to know how to take a test. And I was trying that kind of tactics on it, and it didn't work. Like, they are asking you slightly different, or like slightly nuanced, maybe is the way to say it, questions, so that it's not the obvious necessarily, or the 3 questions are so slightly different. Like, some of them are tough, like what are 3 characteristics of, like, clear air? And you know what I mean? Like, there's a definition of clear air, and it's something like turbulence and humidity and steady showers or something. And then the multiple choices will be like turbulent with intermittent showers. Like, you got to kind of know what you're talking about. You can't just, oh, it's the one with showers. Like, no, it's gonna ask you which kind of showers. And like I said, for me, the weather was the one that I just never paid any attention to. I just look up, or I ask the Weather Channel if it's going to rain. Other than that, I could care less about weather. But you have to know a lot about clouds, and then winds and air, like what conditions the air is and stuff. And that must all matter to pilots because they got windshields and things. I don't know. For us, it's mostly, if it's any of these conditions, we're not even flying because our things can't handle it. Like, we're not going to fly our stuff in rain. Like, come on. So I don't know. I think I've hit all the questions. Dang, it's been 44 minutes. So I guess Clover's not awake. He didn't get the link. He's not showing up in the thing. But if that helped anybody else, you're welcome. If not, at least I learned that kicked off of YouTube, and they wouldn't tell me why. I got this channel, so I'll be doing gear stuff. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm sick of doing gun stuff anyway on YouTube. It's definitely a non-conducive environment for it. So thanks everybody for joining us. I don't know if anybody else besides G23 is out there anymore. Woods went to sleep. We'll see you next time.
Shit. Ninja? Ninja! Ninja!
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.